Hi, welcome everyone to PopCultX episode 129. We're back again this week to talk all things pop culture. With me, as always, is Danny. I'm Gabriel. Let's go ahead and get started. Danny, what's up? What's going on?
Not too much, not too much. It's been a fun Hispanic Heritage Month. We finally just finished that for another year. But although we should be celebrating Hispanic heritage all year round, or Latinx heritage, or however you want to label it. But with that being said, I finally watched Blue Beetle.
Oh, nice.
So yay, kudos to me for finally getting the job done. But it was really good. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the family concept of it, the family aspect of it, really, because that's what it really was about, his family and how they were there for him and he was there for them, considering everything that they didn't tell him at the beginning, which I thought was quite truthful in a way.
Yeah.
I think a lot of families, especially from what I've seen of Hispanic families, they don't tell the bad news to someone when they're trying to protect them in a way. So for them to do that in the film, I thought, oh, wow, that's like, how it is on a almost household basis. So I thought that was really cool. George Lopez, I think you mentioned his character when we talked about it before, but you didn't mention how big of a role he had. And I thought it was great. His character, Uncle Rudy, he played it perfectly. And I thought he was just going to be the comic relief, but he was more than that. And it was perfect. He did a great job in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised by George Lopez. I'm not a huge fan of his, but I thought it was just the right amount of George Lopez in Blue Beetle to make it, to have that comic relief, but not overdo it and have it all about him. So I thought it was really fun. I loved Blue Beetle. I can't wait to watch it again. I loved the plot. I really liked the costume. I thought they did a great job of translating it from the comic book into reality. They got great casting with the lead actor in playing Blue Beetle. I don't think you could do any better. No. And it was just a really fun superhero movie. It was not overly dark or gritty. It wasn't silly. It was just the right mix of humor and action. And they did. I thought they did a really great job. So kudos to them.
Yeah, they did. They mixed in the aspects of the comic book that, I knew about going into it, and they brought in different takes on everything. So it was just a really great superhero movie. Probably one of the better DC offerings has had to date. Yeah. So it was just, I don't know. I think, they did make some changes, but that's to be expected from the source material and what they pulled. But since I hadn't read, going back, Jaime Reyes' first appearance in the comic, so I don't know how much they changed and how much they adapted. I know he was a college graduate in the film, still high school in the comic books when he got Kajada. But, other than that, I guess it didn't really make too much of a difference because it still was a great story.
Yeah.
And the grandma being a badass revolutionary was a fun twist and surprise. I thought that was really cool. And it just made it all the more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. What I was been watching is some scary movies, but with some Latino representation. I saw the sequel to The Babysitter, and it has Jenna Ortega in it, who I'm a big fan. You might know her from Wednesday, from Scream franchise. So I had to go back and watch the first Babysitter movie, and which she's not in, but Bella Thorne is, who is also, I think, part Latina as well. And they did a really great job. Samara Weaving plays this satanic babysitter who's trying to kill the child who's in her charge. And it's just a lot of action. It's really kind of funny. It's directed by Mick G. So you might remember him from directing the Charlie's Angels films. He also used to direct a lot of music videos in the early 90s. So a lot of saturated colors, a lot of big explosions, a lot of fun. So that's the first one. The first one's really funny. It's about a nerdy kind of little kid who doesn't have any friends except for his babysitter. But what happens when the babysitter turns on him and he has to escape her satanic grasp? So that's the first one. The second one follows him when he's in high school. People don't believe what happened in the plot to the first movie, so they don't think that there really was a satanic babysitter.
Oh.
They and it introduces the Jenna Ortega character, and we kind of go from there. A lot of the same characters show up from the first one into the second one, so it's kind of a cool continuation of the story. A lot of like same actors come back, so that's really cool. When they, I always kind of like seeing when like they have little kids in films and then they cast them as their older
Yeah.
selves.
Mhm.
I think that lends to I don't know, it's a coolness factor that you get to see them as an older person. Again, really funny. Also directed by Mick G, written by him and a series of other writers. Really funny. It has some really gruesome death scenes in it. Um, Really cool, spectacular action sequences. It's just a lot of fun. It's not necessarily a scary movie. You're not going to have like any nightmares about watching it, but it's just a fun movie with a bit of a lot of comedy thrown in, but little sprinkles of horror in there. But it's really good. It's enjoyable. I recommend it if you want to have watch something that's not super scary, but still falls under the October Halloween spooky season.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Um, Samara Weaving, you said. I fan casted her in my version of Something Killing the Children live
Yeah,
action, which I think they're actually developing for Netflix. So
oh, I'm sure they are.
why not, right?
Yeah,
um, but I did watch another spooky, almost in the same line of the babysitter, and I finally saw Sleepaway Camp.
nice. Or a classic with the twist.
A cult classic. Yeah, it was well, I was laughing through most of it, and not because it was funny. I mean, people getting killed isn't funny, but just the manner with which they were doing and the acting style and the way it was portrayed, it just made me laugh. I
Yeah.
mean, it was probably a low budget film that over the years developed this following, and I know they made like two or three other movies based on that. So it was really, I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. I like those old 80s, like a lot of humor thrown in, some like cheesy, the way they kill people was like humorous, and it kind of it's not necessarily supposed to gross you out.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's kind of more meant to be humorous. And I like those movies, and The Babysitter is kind of a throwback to that
Oh, okay.
80s era of teen slasher flick movies.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of comparisons can be made with that, but they're just kind of fun movies to watch that aren't necessarily scary, but are like what I would consider like drive-in movies, like movies that you would go and laugh and kind of have a good time watching.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, drive-in movie. I like that. I saw another one, Totally Killer. I'm not sure if you saw this one or not. It's on Prime, and it has that throwback to the 80s slasher movie because it's like a Back to the Future hot tub time machine meets Jason slasher movie. So the main character goes back in time to the mid 80s where she has to like save her mom from being killed or something like that. It's really fun. It's interesting. If you liked um, Babysitter or Sleepaway Camp, you'll like this film.
Okay, so I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's really cool. Other than that, I haven't really been watching much else. Or is that a lie? Did I just lie to you all? I'm trying to think of what else I watched this past week. I know I saw something else, but I can't remember what it was.
Hmm.
So you're out of luck. Actually, no, I did see another movie recently that was interesting, and it goes back to the Hispanic heritage. Is a movie called Cassandro with the Gael Garcia Bernal, where he plays a wrestler, and it was really well done. I'm not sure if you've seen this or not. So he's a luchador, but he turns into an exotica luchador. where it's basically they dress in drag and they really stand out. They don't wear the masks. And it was really well done. It's based on a true story. And it's I mean, the accounts are completely different, but it was based on a true character, a true person. And when I was watching, I was like, you know what? I think I remember this wrestler. Growing up, I used to watch wrestling, and I think I remembered that character or that persona. And it was really cool, fun to watch. I mean, Gael Garcia Bernal did a fantastic job in this film. He's a great actor, and yeah, it was really good. It's worth watching.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised when you say that he's in a movie about wrestling. I wouldn't necessarily think of him as having like a wrestler's build. He's kind of like a small guy. But then when you say he's dressed in drag, then it kind of makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, he started off with his character's name was I think it was called El Topo, which is like the mole, right? So he plays like a little character, little guy, because he is a little guy.
Yeah.
And he's in the ring with these bigger guys as like, I don't want to say the comedy relief, but just the offset. So the size difference. And yeah, and then he transforms because he wants more out of it, and he transforms into the Cassandro character. And it's really cool watching.
I'll have to check it out. Do you remember where it's streaming on?
I believe it might also be Prime as well, or Hulu.
Okay.
I don't recall.
Okay.
But IMDb will tell you right away.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I do appreciate him as an actor. He's a really great actor. Probably one of the best actors of like our generation of Mexican or Latino descent. So he's definitely someone that is always kind of doing us proud as a community because he makes some great films and puts out a lot of great content.
Yeah, definitely. And I know they re-released Werewolf by Night in color. Haven't watched it yet. Yeah, so I'm curious to see why. Well, first off, I want to see why they did it. I don't know if color's going to add any more to the storyline, but I'm also interested to see if they shot it in color and then transitioned it to black and white, or if they shot it black and white and then did the Turner Classic Movie colorization type of thing, where it's very saturated and stuff like that. So I want to watch it.
I think it might be cool if they shot it in black and white and then changed it into color afterwards to give it that old timey.
Exactly.
Kind of. So yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out as well. I didn't realize that they had done that.
Yeah, I think it just came out this week. I saw an ad for it like the week before, so I think it's just this week that it just got released.
Oh, cool. I'll have to watch it. That's definitely something that's cool for the family to watch for like Halloween. That's kind of under the umbrella of like spooky, but not too scary.
Yeah. Yep, it is. And speaking of like spooky, scary Marvel stuff, I also picked up Spine-Tingling Spider-Man. The Scotty Young version is which I got there. But it's another fun story, of course, written by a former guest of the show, Saladin Ahmed. And it continues Peter Parker's journey into a nightmare world. Nice. So they had the digital version, of course, first that came out. They released the paperback version of that. And now this is the continuation of it. So I recommend picking that up.
Nice. I'll have to go check that out today. I definitely am planning on going to my comic book store today to see what's out. It's like a both a negative and a positive because I want to buy some new stuff, but then like I look at my room and I'm like, where am I gonna
Yeah.
So, I kind of have to be conservative with what I buy nowadays, but I'm sure I'll pick something up.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah. I picked up I forgot if it's Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side, but it's like a horror anthology series that came out, I think, a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago. But it had a really interesting story. So it has a story about this man who starts like popping out babies, like unborn fetuses, and it's as gross as it sounds. And he's sort of like haunted by all these babies coming out and following him, and no one else can see them. Everything, people think he's going crazy. And then, the plot twist is that he is a big pro-life supporter, and so the babies are chasing after him saying like, help us, like you only care about us when we're unborn.
Okay.
When we're born, you don't care about us. And then the next twist is that he actually forced his daughter to get an abortion And because he raped her. This is like super like really out there.
Wow.
And the mom ends up shooting him and killing him. But it's a pretty wild story. This is more on the adult side of
You
Made for
think?
Halloween. But it's a pretty wild little short story that is in that anthology series that I thought was kind of interesting because that's the argument about people who are pro-life is that they're super concerned about the fetus before it's born.
Hmm.
But once the child's born, it's like
Get
who's
away
there
from
to
me.
help raise it or who's helping that child. So I thought it was an interesting take is from a super horrific point of view.
Yeah, that's quite the twist. My goodness.
Yeah, it is. It was sort of a shocker. I didn't expect the story to even to read a story like that. I just picked it up because I wanted something scary to read, and it was quite the surprise.
You're like, what is happening?
Yeah,
My
basically,
goodness.
yeah,
But you couldn't put it down. And it sounds interesting. Yeah, I have to keep an eye open for that next time
yeah,
I go to the store, which might be today as well. So why not?
yeah. Definitely checking out those like dollar comic bins, see if there's any back issues that are interesting that I may have missed from a few months or a few years back. Normally, there's always something in there that is kind of cool that is a bargain that you don't necessarily have to pay all that much for.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think I spoke about this a couple weeks ago when I went to go check out a dollar sale they were having. I
Yeah.
picked up a couple of old Jessica Jones issues written by Kelly Thompson.
Oh, nice.
And so I haven't read them yet, but I'm a big fan of her writing, so they should be good. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely now can have a whole collection of people who have been guests or friends of the podcast that
Hmm.
can have, I mean, a ton of collections. I mean, we have a super long laundry list of former guests that we could collect their books and fill up a room easily.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. I mean, it's I always go into the shop, especially when we're talking about comic book writers and artists, looking for their work
Yeah.
because I feel a deeper connect, not a deeper connection, but more of an affinity toward their work, having spoken to them. So knowing who they are, not just through their writing, but having spoken to those people. So I definitely go in there looking for work from past guests.
Yeah, absolutely. It's cool.
Yeah,
I
it
would
really
definitely
is.
support them because I mean, you want to support creators and what their endeavors are. So I always try to, and once you get to know them and you know what their perception is or their perspective and that they're cool people, I definitely want to go out and get their work.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
Definitely.
Is there anything else that you're kind of collecting or looking for?
Um, Not really. Not yet. I mean, I think I have a couple um next month. I think there's a couple series that begin. I think Luke Cage starts a new run with the whole Gang Wars series. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Of course,
Yeah.
it's written by Rodney Barnes, who we've had on the guest, the writer of Philadelphia, Nita Ha's Nightmare Blog, and of course his film career and whatnot. But I'm looking forward to that. He's like the mayor now. Of course, it happened through Devil's Reign, and so it's just his take on him and Spider-Man. I think are teaming up to take down all the big gang bosses.
Mhm.
So, or maybe it's a three faction. So there's Spider-Man and his crew, Luke Cage and the Law on his side, and then of course like Tombstone and all the other evil henchmen that team up or whatever. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to check that out.
But yeah, that's about it for me. How about you?
Cool. Um, Collecting, I don't know. I just kind of going in blind and seeing what catches my eye. Obviously still looking for a Peach, Momoko covers, Maria Wolf covers, when I see them. And other than that, just kind of checking out what's new and what's out there and seeing what is interesting and trying to read a lot of stuff. Probably definitely because of this month I am kind of going towards more of like the spooky stuff and the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit more scary. We had a haunted girl on and the
Yep.
author last week, and so that was one of the most recent purchases that I had. So looking forward to me reading more of that series.
Yeah, I think next one comes out pretty soon. So
Yeah.
make sure
Yeah.
you go order that, and everyone out there go support all those writers. Ooh.
Yeah.
So
So anything movie wise that you're going to be checking out?
not really, but I do have a special surprise for everyone out there, and that is we are welcoming back Professor Latin X to the show. So welcome Frederick Luis Aldama back to PopCultX. It is great to have you back on the show. How have you been?
I have been great. You guys, your show makes my life even more like PopCultX. No, it's honestly, it's great having you all out there doing the work that you're doing. And I love being on your show. You both are just so smart and in tune with what's happening in the world, and just so compassionate and congenial. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Hey, I have a question though. I was thinking about this before we got on today. I've never asked this question. Speaking of PopCultX, like what's the origin story of PopCultX?
That's a really good question. And there might be a couple different answers to that, but I'll give my retelling that, or if Gabe, you want to give yours first.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Oh, well, thank you. So Gabe and I, we've known each other for probably almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
And we always had great conversations in person. We were both in San Diego at the time. I moved away during the pandemic. Things happened. We need a way to creatively release some of our maybe stress and just the stuff that we're watching and seeing. So what better way to do that than through a podcast? So we got together. We brainstormed. We went back and forth for quite a while of what our name was going to be. We knew it wanted to be something with pop culture. We knew we wanted to be something with Gen X in there. So at the end of the day, PopCultX was formed.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that was important for us was bringing our unique perspective, us being both from Gen X, us both being Chicano, Latinos, and us being nerds and being involved in nerd culture. We definitely wanted to be able to talk about that stuff and just have fun and have guests on that we want to meet and have a conversation with. And we've been very fortunate to have really cool guests like you.
Yeah, really awesome. It is interesting that some really amazing things came. I mean, the silver lining to the pandemic was, PopCultX, among other things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, really, really, really cool that we have this and that you guys are continuing to do this and to bring into the kind of public space, the public imaginary, both an awareness of all the cool stuff that's happening within the pop cultural creative spaces, but also a kind of critical and a creative angle. So yeah, really, really great. Really great.
Thank you. So it's been about a year since you've been last on our podcast. I know that you're a busy man and you've been developing a lot of things. What have you been working on?
Yeah. I mean, I like you, the two of you, we just never stop, right? And it's like, are we, at some point I'm like, am I running after the train or am I the one in the driving the train thinking that I'm running after the train? Like, and is this like, what kind of train is this? Is this like, the sort of snow plower train that we see, I don't know. Anyway, basically, the latest stuff and the fun, exciting that's just about to drop. So we've got Pyroclast, which is the comic that's part of the 13, which is coming out of Chispa Comics and kind of brainchilds of Hector and David Bowles and Hector. Yeah. And mine is one of the characters, Pedro or Pete Lumeras, who's just turned 18, and he's dealing with some stuff, like deep stuff in his past that he didn't know about. So I'm really excited about that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that one in a second. But in addition, I'm super excited about another graphic novel. It's like a braided series of graphic vignettes that's going to drop in January, called Through Fences, and that's set on the U.S.-Mexico border, and really focused on youth, teens, and kids, especially teens, who we don't really, unless we're living along in the borderlands, we don't, the news, all that stuff doesn't really give us much on it. And we don't have a lot of stories about the complexities of life for young people along the US-Mexico borderland. So I'm super excited about that. But I'm also launching the Latinx Pop magazine, a soft launch on November 11th, and we can talk more about that. And finally, I have, and I'm going to give you a sneak preview. Hold on. I have dropping this comic.
The Steampunk Era Chronicle. Ooh, nice.
And that we're going to do a special edited kind of edition, first issue, collector's edition in July. And then the graphic novel will drop this time next year.
Nice. The artwork on that cover is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man, tell me about it. Yeah, we, working with Miguel, and so what's cool for me is that in the story world that I constructed, and the characters very carefully, young women, fierce resistance fighters, set in the 19th century. They're all one way or another, they're one way or the other. They are either orphaned or they've chosen not to be with family. And they are smart, and, one's like, this great inventor, and another one's a linguist, knows all these languages. It's awesome. And then you have these jaguars that wear this really cool steampunk collar thing that actually translates Jaguarese into Spanish and English. Nice. Yeah. So yeah, I'm super excited about that one.
Very cool. So I'm curious, when you create new worlds such as that, are you drawing a lot from your personal experience and from people that have inspired you in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gabe. So just really quickly on the Steampunk Era Chronicles, which I know we don't want to spend too much time on, but the main character, Victoria, who's the one who's really training these new generations of fierce resistance fighter women, her last name is Aldama. And so she is the orphaned daughter of one of the actual historically accurate and actual factual Aldama brothers, who, along with Miguel Hidalgo, started the War of Independence from Spain in 1810. So yeah, there's a direct link to to Aldama, and then of course in the Pyroclast stuff, I wasn't a star quarterback like Pete. In fact, I was the kid that was never picked to be on any sports team. And if I was, it was very reluctantly, because, I just, that, like you both, not that I'm saying you're not athletic, but I was a complete nerd kid, right? But Pete's a star quarterback, but he does have, and it's set in a contemporary moment. He loves kind of 90s alt rock, which is, of course, a lot of the stuff I love, like Jane's Addiction, Nine Inch Nails, Soundgarden, Smashing Pumpkins. He's what I think of as a confident loner. Like, he's popular, but he doesn't care about being popular. He's kind of got his own thing going. He's been rebuilding this old Triumph motorbike that he kind of got spare parts for. He's really into like that kind of detailed stuff, which I can totally relate to. He lives in a bedroom that was kind of built out of plywood in the back of the garage, which I totally relate to. And he's dealing with some, he's got a little sister, but he's struggling with this anger inside of him. And it starts to, as he's turned 18, it starts to manifest itself in this hardening of his skin. Mm-hmm. And eventually, like, actually kind of him burning so hot that he turns into this lava. And so even though he's this cool, confident loner, he's really struggling with a lot of stuff inside that he hasn't been able to express. And I think that all three of us can relate to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've definitely had those days.
Yeah, I wish I could turn into a lava monster at times. Yeah, that's yeah, I can imagine. And it seems like it has to do a lot with family as well. So it's really cool that you're incorporating a lot of family into your writing and the stories of family. Gabe and I were just talking earlier about Blue Beetle, the film, and how it really centered around the family aspect of it. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah, no, it's really, the other thing too is like, his dad's not in the picture, and that's always been a big question mark for him. Mm-hmm. And when you pick up the comic, you'll start to learn a little bit more. His Tio Jorge, Tio George, has been really like the surrogate, papa in his life. And there's a really interesting relationship between the two of them that develops also in this story, a really deep relationship. But one of the reasons is it pivots around Tio George finally revealing to Pete why certain things have been kept back, and why the mom has told him certain things about the dad that aren't actually entirely true. And it's the Tio Jorge character that gives him this ancient double-sided weapon knife called the Tecbatl. And it's because Tio George knows that if Pete can actually learn to control this, basically what becomes a superpower, then he can do lots of good in the world. And so Tio George is really that kind of person, his wise guide, the one kind of helping him train, etc., and to understand, along with the training, his deeper histories and why, he is who he is.
Very cool. And that comes out, I think it says on November 22nd of this year, through Chispa Comics, and that's really cool. I think I've seen some of the other ones in my local comic book store. I think I remember seeing Katrina's Caravan. So I'm really looking forward to picking this one up.
Sounds like a very cool story. I'm curious to get your expert opinion on the current state of Latino voices, Latinx voices in the pop culture realm. We've seen a lot of, Blue Beetle. We've seen the work that you're creating. Do you think right now is a really good, almost like Renaissance time where we are seeing Latin voices, especially in different areas like superhero films, steampunk, science fiction? Is it now a good time? Are we starting to see, is it like a positive change?
Yeah, I'm always optimistic and hopeful that every second that I wake up is a Renaissance moment for us, right? And I do feel really optimistic but as you both know, and our viewers know, we are constantly still called to task because we're not at that point of having arrived, and I know Blue Beetle, like we were all supporting our writers, our creatives, all of the creatives during the strikes in LA. And we will obviously continue whenever that happens. But I felt like that the timing of Blue Beetle's release and everything that was going on really hurt that film. And my worry is that the bean counters are going to see that and be like, not contextualize and say, this didn't hit the numbers that we wanted. And so, we're not going to do another, Latino, Latinx protagonist driven superhero movie. And that would be a shame because, as you both just mentioned, I mean, Blue Beetle was for me the best DC in that kind of vein, where it was playful, fun, action, adventure that I've seen in a long ever. Like, I mean, really, like,
agree
completely.
We were just talking about, I mentioned that exact same thing of just how much fun it was and how it had the right mixture of action and comedy. And how fun it was just to watch a character that represents our community in a superhero space. So we definitely want to see more of that character and more films being made with Blue Beetle and other Latinx superheroes.
So back to your point, though, we're still doing the hard good fight. I've got my Latino graphics series that I've constantly, getting manuscripts for and pushing out. I just launched another graphic story series, any mixture of visual and textual storytelling. So it doesn't have to be comic book. It could be a combination. It could be like a photo novella kind of thing, or it could be a combination, as long as there's a combination of words and drawings, called Brown Ink. And that's with Flower Song Press. So, we're out here, we keep doing what we do, and we are making a difference. And I do, I'm not throwing up my hands at all. And so if that's any measure of us in a kind of renaissance or in a good space, I would say then we are in a good space.
You mentioned earlier that you're working on a magazine or e-zine. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the Latinx Pop magazine, again, we keep doing this kind of work, but also a kind of a hub too. So, for instance, it will have a curated section with podcasts, which we will be doing. But at the same time, I want people to be able to click on that tab and see like others, like you, PopCultX, the Primos podcast, the Comadres podcast, things like that, kind of, because there's a bunch of us out here doing all these different really cool things. So it'll also be nice to kind of put together a hub, right, for people to find us. But yeah, in the same vein of what you all are doing, with this will be lit, art, film, TV, new media, and also, bringing in a lot of the PhD students that I trained who are now either researchers or faculty or, doing other things in the world. This is to say, bringing them in on the team so that this lasts longer than me, right? So building legacy and depth, right? So Latinx Pop Magazine as a hub for disseminating knowledge, reviews, interviews, podcasts, and so on, in and around all things Latinx pop culture, literature, the arts, but also really kind of setting it up so that things don't end when I have to step away, right?
Yeah, I think that's really cool because I know there is a lot of stuff out there, but it seems to be all disjointed in a way. And if you go search on the internet, you're getting thrown here, thrown there. So to have a central hub that you're creating where you find one website that you can bookmark, you can link and just return to over and over again, so you can get your fill of pop culture from a Latinx point of view, and you don't have to go anywhere else. I think that's really cool.
Absolutely.
So another graphic novel you have coming out, which I'm really excited because you did send us a kind of a sneak preview to it, and that is Through Fences.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about like you said, the borderlands, border towns, and it has to deal with a lot of the immigrant children. And it was very emotional read at times. It really struck a chord with me, especially with some of the characters. I grew up in a border town in San Diego, so I could feel a lot of what those characters must have been going through in a way. I mean, a lot of my classmates that I had would cross over the TJ border every day to come to school and then go back. So it was really not good to see, but it was really good that their stories were being told. So like you said, we don't get that enough from the teenager child perspective. So yeah, kudos to you for writing that. It was a really well written and a visually appealing story and novel.
Yeah, let me just jump in real quick. And then Gabe, yeah, whatever you want to, I know you probably have a bunch of questions too. But, going back to that point, we get bombarded with this sort of assault of kind of through the mainstream news of like what it means to be in that borderland space. And it's usually as a threat coming across as either a narco or someone who's coming to take someone else's job. That's how it's always framed. And we construct in the mainstream imaginary the borderlands as a place of kind of chaos. And you're like, hold on, no, life happens here.
Yeah.
And it's complicated. And, there are kids whose fathers, mothers, just because they have to put food on the table are migra. They're like, and they're Latino, and it's like, so it's a really complicated place, but it's a place also of just everyday life. And we just don't get that, in our stories.
Absolutely.
Because these stories are kind of few and far between where we really get to see the humanity from this perspective. And, it's such a politicized issue. Did you feel a lot of responsibility sort of to tell it right? I'm sure that must have been a big burden for you.
Yeah. So, really interesting question. And I mean, some of these, actually, most of these are recreations of stories told to me by Latino teens and their own experiences.
Wow.
And actually, horrifically, even in one case, as you know, one of the stories is devastating.
Yeah.
And that's based on a true story.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So to your point though, Gabe, the burden in the sense of the responsibility to the experiences, the real experiences shared with me, to the representing of the complexities of the experiences, the complexities of family life, and the struggles and tensions within our own families, as teens, as adults, raising teens, etc. So, all of that definitely very, very much a part of, very, very much in the, if you will, the kind of rear view mirror as I'm writing and building these. And I'll also mention that Oscar Garza's artwork here, is just extraordinary. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that because Mashbone and Grifty, as you both know, which Oscar's known for, is really cartoony. And when I approached Oscar for this project, I did so because I knew that the level of, in some cases, in most cases in the story, the level of violence in the stories needed a little bit of that kind of cartoonish abstraction. Because if it had been too, let's say, photoreal comics, visual storytelling, I think it might push our readers away.
Yeah, I can understand that. And he did a fantastic job with the artwork on it. It is, and each vignette, each small story had a slight twist to the artistic style, which I thought was really compelling because then we knew it was from a different perspective, from a different person. We knew it wasn't just the continuation of the same story. So I really appreciated that. Was there anything else about, I guess, Through Fences? I know it releases in, I think we're expected in January of next year. That really, you really want to embark onto our audience, that you really, really want to make sure they know about it.
Yeah, I think that beyond what we've just shared, I think it's really important to understand that we Latinos in the US are very diverse within that demographic. And within that diversity, each of our, say, communities and the family makeup within those communities presents its own kind of sets of tensions and struggles that especially young people, young Latinos, are dealing with today. So it's not just us against or within or versus a US mainstream. Sometimes it's us and, really struggling with some of the deep-seated, ideas, political standings, even belief systems within our own family that I think that now I don't want to be like, okay, now because we're so complex, we're not united. But I do want us to understand, even if we are united as Latinos, or there's a sense of our common bonds, that there is real kind of difference and struggle within those differences within our family life.
I can understand that.
Excellent. So there's a lot of good work that our audience is going to be looking forward to coming from you, that we'll be definitely picking up and reading. And until then, where can our audience, or where can fans of your work stay up to date with you until that magazine launches? Are you most active on X, on Instagram? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so at Professor Latinx is the handle for both X and for Instagram. I'm on both, and the Latinx Pop Lab, which is really the kind of the bedrock for the Latinx Pop magazine, is also on Insta and X, and that's the same thing, at Latinx Pop Lab UT.
Right on. Well, final question I have for you that I like to ask all of our guests, and you being a return visitor, and I think this is your third time on, so it's becoming like an annual tradition, I think, which is really cool to have you on every year to chat. What are you currently watching, reading, listening to that maybe we can share with our fan base as well?
Yeah, so I have to say I've been watching eagerly watching and waiting for the each show to drop. Gen V.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, really good. Way better than The Boys. So much better. And I just started Neon, which is pretty cool. It's like the whole reggaeton kind of, take a look at that on Netflix. That just dropped. Okay. And I'm always reading, I'll just pick up, show you. I picked up this like beautiful
Bastard
yeah
cool.
And it's set in Louisiana, and when I was in Paris at the Sorbonne just recently, stopped by a comic book store and picked this up, and
very cool.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful and just like super dynamic. Wow. So yeah, lots of really cool stuff going on out there in the world. And yeah.
Excellent.
Well, thank you once again for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you here, a friend of the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Always a pleasure speaking to Professor Latinx, frequent contributor here and guest at PopCultX. So definitely stay up to date with all of the work that he's doing. We definitely want to support Through the Fences and Pyroclast, very cool works that are coming out. As well as his magazine that will be a hub for all things pop culture and Latinx. So definitely want to be checking that out. So give him a follow on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, and Instagram, and make sure that you keep up to date with everything that he's working on.
Definitely, yeah. That Steampunk Chronicles that he gave us a sneak preview of sounds really fascinating.
Really cool.
So really interested in seeing that. So yeah, thanks again, Professor Latinx. And thank you all out there for tuning in today and for following, liking, subscribing, and sharing what we do here. And like Gabe said, be sure to go follow the Latinx Pop Lab, Professor Latinx, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.